In 1971, a psychology professor at Stanford University ran an experiment that had to be shut down after 6 days. Not because it failed, because it worked too well. 24 ordinary students, randomly split into two groups. Half became guards, half became prisoners. No training, no scripts, no real authority, just costumes. Within 6 days, the guards were psychologically tormenting the prisoners, and the prisoners were having mental breakdowns. Nobody was acting. This is the experiment that proves something most people spend their entire lives refusing to believe. The monster is not somewhere out there, it is in here. The man who ran this experiment was Philip Zimbardo. He was a respected professor of psychology at Stanford. He genuinely believed the study would take 2 weeks. He had to end it on day 6. Here is how it started. Zimbardo advertised for male college students to participate in a study of prison life. 75 people responded. 24 were selected. They were all psychologically stable, healthy, and normal by every measure available. On the morning of the experiment, the students playing prisoners were arrested at their homes. Real police came, real handcuffs. They were booked, blindfolded, and taken to the basement of the Stanford Psychology Building, which had been converted into a mock prison. They were given smocks to wear, no underwear, a chain on their ankle, a number replacing their name. The students playing guards were given uniforms, wooden batons, and mirrored sunglasses. The glasses were specifically chosen to prevent eye contact, to make the guards feel less human and the prisoners feel more alone. Zimbardo told the guards one thing: maintain order. He gave them no instructions on how. Day 1 was quiet, awkward. Everyone knew it was fake. Day 2, everything changed. The prisoners staged a small rebellion. They blocked their cell doors and refused orders. The guards responded by stripping them, removing their beds, and putting the ringleaders in solitary confinement. From that moment forward, something had shifted. The guards began inventing increasingly creative punishments. Push-ups, humiliation rituals, sleep deprivation. They forced prisoners to clean toilets with their bare hands. They denied bathroom breaks. They made prisoners refer to themselves only by their numbers, never by their names. And here is the part that should disturb you the most. Nobody told them to do this. These were not violent people. These were not cruel people before the experiment. These were college students who had been randomly assigned a role 6 days earlier. The uniform did that. The role did that. By day 4, 3 prisoners had already been released early due to severe emotional distress. One prisoner began screaming and crying uncontrollably. Another developed a psychosomatic rash across his entire body. A third simply stopped speaking. The guards who showed the most cruelty were not punished. They were quietly rewarded with extra privileges. Zimbardo himself had become so absorbed in the role of prison superintendent that he stopped seeing the students as students. He began seeing them as actual prisoners and actual guards. It took a visitor to the experiment, a graduate student named Christina Maslach, to say the words that ended everything. She watched the prisoners being led blindfolded to the bathroom in chains. She turned to Zimbardo and said, "What you are doing to these boys is terrible." Zimbardo ended the experiment the next morning. Day 6. He later admitted that he had lost himself completely in the role he had created. Now, here is what this experiment actually proved. Human behavior is not driven primarily by character. It is driven by situation. Put good people in a system that rewards cruelty, and they will become cruel. Put good people in a role that removes their individual identity, and they will follow that role wherever it leads. This is called situational attribution. And it is one of the most uncomfortable findings in the entire history of psychology. Because it means that the people who did terrible things throughout history were not necessarily different from you. They were you. in a different situation, wearing a different uniform. Zimbardo spent the rest of his career studying what he called the Lucifer effect, the process by which ordinary people cross the line into evil, not through a single dramatic choice, but through a slow series of small steps, each one slightly worse than the last. Each step feels justified in context. Each step feels survivable. Until you look back and you cannot recognize where you started. The Stanford Prison Experiment was not a study of prisons. It was a study of how quickly the environment you are placed in can replace the person you thought you were. If you watched our video about Phineas Gage, you know what he taught us. The brain shapes the person. Now you know the other side of the equation. The environment shapes the brain. Follow dark instincts. Because the next video reveals the book that predicted all of this. Before it happened.